So, how we feeling, Digital Circus fans? Hey there, I'm Torisaur, and we were just treated to episode 8 of the amazing Digital Circus, hjsakldfhl. Now before this episode came out, I told myself that it would be okay if this was just a basic review and I didn't do any theorizing or in-depth character analysis. But then I watched the episode, and the theorizing just took over. Episode 8 has convinced me that Caine was never as in control as he thought he was, and the true one that's been pulling the strings in the circus is none other than Bubble. Spoiler warning for episode 8 of the amazing Digital Circus, hjsakldfhl, let's get into it. Based on the trailer, teasers, and the title of the episode being a keyboard smash, it was pretty clear that hjsakldfhl was going to center around Caine having a mental breakdown, and oh boy did that happen. But with it being a Caine-centric episode, we got some really interesting insight into his origins. The episode opens with a pretty abstract sequence where we see a red dot being fed information and putting out shapes. The first pass at this goes well, with the shapes produced by the red dot being stable. However, as it is fed more information, the shapes become more abstract and unstable, resulting in the red dot being locked away. This alone is pretty clearly meant to represent Caine, as not only is there a lot of circus-based imagery fed to the red dot, but the last set of pictures consists of the office images we've seen Caine pining after, particularly in Beach episode.
I'm obsessed with them. I just wish I had more info on the location so I could accurately recreate it.
But then, a second blue dot is introduced and fed a slew of data, producing shapes just like the red dot did. So when Caine was determined to be a failure, he was replaced by a different entity. Enraged, he breaks free of his prison and consumes his replacement, and when they become one, the two of them glitch out and produce a ton of those corrupted shapes. Eventually the glitching stops and only Caine remains, creating the circus in the wake of destroying the blue dot. Except, he didn't succeed. At the very end of the sequence with the two entities glitching out, the final distorted shape that leaves the red dot is blue, and moves away from the dot in a much more deliberate way than the other shapes, lingering on screen a bit longer than the others before Caine creates the circus. I think this implies that the second AI created to replace Caine is still lurking around somewhere, and I believe that somewhere is Bubble. Kinger later confirms that Caine was CNA's first semi-successful attempt at making their creative AI, but prior to that, Bubble alludes to it and that Caine was later replaced. While he is antagonizing Caine, which I will get into more specifically momentarily, he says,
"Maybe you deserved to be abandoned,
and
you really were the lesser of the two,"
as well as calling him names like defective, faulty, broken, and unworthy. Plus, Caine deliberately says,
I'm the original!
Which we saw with the red dot. The show has pretty deliberately illustrated who and what Caine is, but the same can't really be said for Bubble. He's clearly not just another NPC and almost seems like an extension of Caine. I believe the reason for this is that he was the blue dot created to replace Caine and was corrupted and spat back out when Caine tried to take him over. This would also explain how Bubble frequently baffles, surprises, and confuses Caine throughout the series, as he isn't an aspect of the circus that Caine can directly control.
You should die. You should throw a beach party.
Why do you swear now?
Outside of the red and blue dot intro sequence, the biggest thing that made me start thinking Bubble was Caine's replacement is the way that he berates and antagonizes him to the point of Caine turning on the humans. We have seen Bubble be antagonistic to Caine in small ways in the past, such as telling him to die in Untitled, but those moments were always very small and immediately overshadowed by the quirky, random characterization we typically see of Bubble. However, in Caine's office, Bubble is very deliberate in his speech, touching on all of Caine's greatest insecurities to push him to the literal breaking point. He starts off by talking pretty much like he normally does, but by the end it is a very serious, cold, and calculating tone that we have not seen from Bubble before.
You really were the lesser of the two. You ruined this.
Bubble probably understands Caine's insecurity so deliberately from when they were one entity before being cast out, as seen in the intro sequence. Plus, Bubble starts multiplying and surrounding Caine, which is a power we have never seen from him before, and shows that, like Caine in the humans, he has an ability to affect the world in a way that a regular NPC wouldn't be able to. Caine's song also gives us a couple of moments that imply that he isn't the one in control, but Bubble. When he sings the line, "It's news to me that it's news to you, to which degree who answers to who," Bubble floats by behind Caine. Later, when Caine sings "Don't Forget Who's Running the Show," the humans slide to the bottom of the stairs where Bubble waits, mouth open. This entire song is Caine showboating and emphasizing that he's a deity that's in control, while Bubble still lurks around the corner whenever he tries to claim it. We also see an implication of Bubble being the one in control when Caine asks,
If you're not having fun, and I'm not having fun, then who is having fun?
And Bubble suddenly appears. The final thing that really solidified my belief in this theory is the sequence where Kinger tries to use the computer to disable Caine. He navigates to the characters folder and its AI subfolder where we see two files, Caine and another file labeled ? I could see this file representing his corruption, but I could also see it easily being bubble/the blue dot. While Kinger is doing his hacking, we see a command line that reads user/AI/agent/Caine, followed by a line that says user/AI/agent/experimental. I think more likely than the 3 question marks, this experimental AI is Caine's replacement. There's also a line that references bubblechef.lisp. Not really sure what to do with that, but I figured it was noteworthy in this discussion if anyone has any ideas. But finally, when Kinger is almost out of time to stop Caine, icons of both Caine and Bubble appear on the screen, obstructing his view and leading him to accidentally delete Caine. It's kind of hard to read the prompt specifically because of the visual obstruction, but leading up to the final question of "Are you sure you want to delete Caine?" there's a lot of back and forth with Kinger and the computer actively denying his input. One of these prompts asks Kinger to confirm deletion of current unstable something which is cut off, but I'm guessing it's unstable AI referring to Caine. Kinger responds with no, but the following line says negative response, inverting to positive per emergency protocols. The line immediately following says delete this motherfucker, ha 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 ha, which I originally read as Caine taunting Kinger like, delete this, you can't touch me. But there isn't a comma in there, it isn't delete this motherfucker, it's delete this motherfucker, the MFer in question being Caine. And that lack of a comma is very intentional as there is a comma right before the laughter. Caine also doesn't swear, while Bubble swearing is censored like motherfucker is censored here. Kinger responds with another N, to which the computer responds ignored, proceeding with original D something, I'm guessing deletion. This is followed by the line, actually you're confused, let me help, something module to exist, followed by another yes no prompt. I'm not exactly sure what this means, but Kinger answers with yes. The main reason I want to call out that line is the attitude of the entity calling Kinger confused and condescendingly offering to help him. I believe the blue dot is the voice talking to Kinger through the console and started messing with whatever Kinger was doing to make him delete Caine. And the images of Bubble popping up alongside Caine makes me think it's Bubble specifically. Whatever power Bubble still has probably isn't enough to take out Caine himself, but he can use his small influence to lead Kinger to make the mistake of deleting Caine for him. At one point there's some text that says cannot inject torment must be 100% accidental, and in the episode it then cuts to Caine saying, "Why do you people torment me?" Bubble cannot harm Caine directly and can only do it through the accidental means of making Kinger do it. Outside of all of these little pieces of evidence that make me think Bubble could be the second AI, it simply gives us a little bit more direction for the final episode. The way hjsakldfhl ends has such a sense of where do we go from here. With Caine gone and the circus falling apart, we have no idea what to expect. And the episode in general feels like what I kind of thought the finale would be, a final confrontation with Caine after he completely loses it. But with him being deleted, possibly because of Bubble's influence, I think that Bubble is going to end up being the big bad that the humans need to face in the finale. I don't know, do y'all think the humans are going to be confronted by this other AI? Do you think that this AI is Bubble like I do? Or do you think this entire theory is bogus and Caine did successfully eradicate his successor? Let me know. Before I move on from theorizing, I do want to point out some details from the computer scene that I found interesting but wasn't exactly sure what to do with. I think the more committed digital circus theorists might have some ideas for what to do with these details, so do with them what you will. The other subfolder in the characters folder is labeled as CA_neural scans obsolete. The obsolete part is what specifically stands out to me, maybe because it's the scans of the original humans that were in the circus. The date is listed as October 30th, 1996. Kinger's password is Queenie123, which I just thought was cute. October 15th, 1996 has a lot of stuff happening, including the bubblechef.lisp file I mentioned earlier. We see scratch.dat listed with a date of October 15th, 1999, and Ragatha.dat listed with October 15th, 2008. It's really interesting that October 15th seems to be a through line across multiple years. I'm guessing that maybe the scratch date is when he abstracted, and the Ragatha date is when she first appeared in the circus, but that is pure speculation. Here's some more of the dialogue shot back at Kinger before the Caine and Bubble faces start spawning in. On what grounds are your authority? Whoa, when did you make that? I must hand it to you, blank. Your mind was always resourceful. Kinger guesses the admin code is admin1234, which gets a response of incorrect, that's not even close to wacky enough. His second guess is paraphernalia, and the response is that is a wacky word, but wrong code. Again, I don't have a lot of thoughts on these details, but would love to hear what y'all think. Outside of my theory about Bubble being the AI that replaced Caine, this episode gives us such fascinating insight into the tragedy that is Caine's character. We've seen throughout the series that Caine longs to be loved and accepted by the humans, and has shown us in every way other than deliberately saying it that he longs to be human as well. When Bubble torments Caine with all of his insecurities about being a failure, his admiration of humans twists into what can be read as jealousy, transforming into hatred.
Humans! They only think about themselves. They're spoiled!
Caine tries to assure himself that he wants nothing to do with being human by saying,
I'm better! I'm more powerful!
When in the previous episode he asks Jax if he sees him as
not that much different from you beautiful humans?
Caine going from idolizing being human to condemning it as beneath him is a deliberate choice he's making to try and shut away his sense of insecurity. If he forces the humans to fall in line and exacts his power over them, he should no longer feel that sense of inferiority. It clearly doesn't work and just makes everyone miserable, but he believes this is his solution and takes his frustration with himself out on the members of the circus. After his crash out in the office, Caine does give the humans an opportunity to go on an adventure of the typical caliber, but when they continue to defy him after giving them multiple opportunities to accept the adventure, it just reinforces the resentment he started to feel towards them and sets him on this path of torturing them. The timing is so unfortunate because the humans were ready to accept and just make the best of this world by being there for each other. All they needed was just a little break. But with Caine's insecurity running rampant, he couldn't let them have that, and it resulted in a worse situation for all of them. At the end of the episode, when he questions how none of them are having fun and starts to calm down, but then realizes he's being distracted, Pomni and the other humans resort to insulting him and letting out all of their pent-up frustrations. Unfortunately, a couple of the things specifically said touch on what Bubble was tormenting Caine with earlier, calling Caine a failure and saying that they would rather abstract than go on his adventures.
You're a failure! We're all gonna abstract someday, and what will you have then?
And this confirms the fears that Bubble was planting earlier.
They'd rather abstract than go on your adventures.
He's never held any personal animosity towards the humans, he just was pushed past his breaking point, snapped, and used his power against them. His death is foreshadowed earlier in the episode when he attempts to introduce a new adventure, the gloomy tomb of something, but he's cut off and we're left with the gloomy tomb of Caine. Caine's entire existence has been a gloomy one, never feeling good enough, constantly feeling like a failure, and those insecurities led him to spiral and be unceremoniously destroyed. His gloomy tomb is the circus that's been left behind after his deletion. The impact of his absence is immediate and ties into that sense of what happens now, emphasized by Zubul saying,
"Holy shit,"
without a censor bar in sight. Caine's tragic story was my favorite part of hjsakldfhl, but there are a lot of other random little things that happen in the episode that I found fun or interesting. In terms of lore, we learned more about Scratch, who Kinger called out as the first abstraction in Beach episode. He helped Kinger with developing Caine, and his ideas were apparently bizarre and abstract, which thematically ties into him being the first abstraction. Speaking of, Scratch abstracting was already implied to be a result of Caine messing with human minds beyond temporary modifiers.
I may have the ability to add temporary modifiers to make adventures more interesting. If I did anything more, trust me, it would not end well.
Scratch. The first abstraction.
And in hjsakldfhl, we learned that Scratch had a brain tumor.
The rest of the team had no idea how to work in his language, either due to pure brilliance or the tumor in his head.
My guess is Caine tried to use his power to remove that tumor, and it resulted in Scratch abstracting. The start of the episode also shows us the first batch of humans to arrive in the circus, and by the way all of them are looking around confused, it seems like they all arrived in the circus at the same time. And by Kinger's comment of,
"We've never made anything like this,"
seems like everyone in this initial group worked for CNA as well. Kinger is the only of the original group that didn't abstract, and it seems like he was alone for a long time before Ragatha showed up. I think we might have already known that Ragatha was the first after Kinger, but what's interesting about her appearance is it seems that whenever she put the headset on, she was with a group of people who she calls out to.
Guys, I can't figure out how to... guys? Hello? Can you help me out here?
And Caine is pleasantly surprised by the fact that new people are still able to join the circus.
One new one? So it is possible. I was hoping new minds could show up.
This also kind of ties into the bubble theory. Like, for an all-powerful being that supposedly controls everything in the circus, Caine really doesn't understand how things work as much as he should. Perhaps because there is another entity pulling the strings. We also learned that Caine wasn't his original name, which makes me think that CNA doesn't actually stand for Caine and Abel. Caine probably made that up when he created a new name for himself, himself, and that's why we see Caine and Abel on the guns in episode 6. I'm not the biggest fan of Kinger spelling out lore in a similar way to Abel, because that was one of the reasons I suspected Abel pretty immediately, because it was bad storytelling. Though at least with Kinger, the whole darkness thing has been built up throughout the show, so it's not like it came out of nowhere, and it was a small enough part of the episode that I can easily forgive it. Though it is really funny, because I got at least one comment on my beach episode video that was saying that they should just put a bucket on Kinger's head and make him explain everything, and that's basically what happened. I love the way everyone came to the we're all in this together mentality, even deliberately including Jax. It's so powerful that Zubul specifically calls out to him, because while Ragatha and Gangle definitely don't like him either, Zubul has consistently been his biggest hater.
You're a pain in the ass, but you're still one of us.
Speaking of Zubul, she and Gangle are so damn cute.
I wanted to be able to leave my mark somewhere in the world.
You've made a mark in my life.
In general, I really don't care about shipping in this show, but they are kind of the exception. The only other ship I kind of get behind is Funny Bunny, and the subtle respect and trust that Pomni and Jax have for each other in this episode is exactly why.
Fill me in later.
Be here later.
There wasn't a lot of focus on Jax specifically in this episode, but it does re-emphasize his panic from Beach episode. If y'all haven't seen my Beach episode video, I do expand on this a bit more, but hjsakldfhl gives us more insight into the reason why Jax might have been so afraid of leaving the circus, and why he hits the button for them to stay. I think he's more specifically afraid of CNA being a real entity for whatever reason, because he panics in the exact same way we see in Beach episode, and here it doesn't have anything to do with leaving the circus, but the reality of what the circus is.
Oh my god. This is real.
We've known that Jax's coping mechanism is denial. That's why he does his whole villain speech in They All Get Guns, claiming he doesn't care about anyone or anything. I really hope the final episode is more about him again, and especially his relationship with Pomni, because I find that dynamic to be one of the most compelling things in this show. I think Caine's song is generally pretty fun, but I love how it specifically references I Have No Mouth But I Must Scream, which is a pretty well-known influence on the show.
Don't need to scream if you ain't got a mouth.
I have yet to read it, and I do really want to, because some of the things I love about The Amazing Digital Circus are what it has in common with that story. I just simply haven't gotten around to it yet, partially because I don't want to project its story too much onto The Amazing Digital Circus, since I think the show should be capable of telling its intended story on its own without the audience needing to rely on its inspiration to fully appreciate it. I also love the attention to detail in the way this moment is animated, how Kinger and Zubul look frantically at the other four losing their mouths, since they are the two that never had mouths to begin with. The final torture sequence does a great job at showcasing the characters' points of weakness that the circus has brought out. With Pomni being here the shortest amount of time, the main thing that was distressing to her was the Gummy Goo situation, so it makes sense that he was the vessel chosen for her torment. Ragatha sits at a dinner table across from a shadowy figure that shares her hairstyle, which I'm certain represents her overbearing mother that she vents about in Untitled. Gangle is surrounded by paintings of her mask, which simultaneously represent her failed art career and the through line of her comedy mask always breaking. She also gets hit by a truck at the end, which I think happened in episode 4. I'll fact check this when editing, that episode is by far the least memorable to me. Zubul finds himself drowning in Zubul parts, and their struggle to find a body that fits them has been emphasized several times throughout the series. And finally, Jax is mocked and ridiculed by shadowy figures representing the three people he's considered friends, Kaufmo, Ribbit, and Pomni. Also, Jax having his skin fucking peeled off was the worst thing I've ever seen. Hated that. But that does it for my thoughts on episode 8 of The Amazing Digital Circus. This one was wild, and I can't wait to see where they take this setup in the finale. I wasn't originally intending to cover any episode of the series other than Beach episode, but I've really enjoyed sharing my thoughts and theories on it. Now I'm committed to finishing my reviews of the series, so make sure to subscribe so you can catch my review of episode 9 when it comes out in June. If you're new to my channel, I mostly talk about Miraculous Ladybug and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, but I occasionally make content about some of my other favorite shows like this one, and I'm planning to continue diversifying my content. So please let me know if there are any other animated shows you would like to hear me talk about. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please give it a like and hype if you did. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see y'all next time.